Okay, we'll call to order the April 2nd regular meeting of the City Council. Roll call, please.
Mayor Brinkman.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Stallman.
Here.
Councilmember Beckman.
Here.
Councilmember Cernanik.
Present.
Councilmember Cole.
Here.
Councilmember Taylor.
Present.
Councilmember Valdez.
Present.
Okay, any changes to the agenda?
Pledge of allegiance.
Okay, seeing none, the agenda is approved. Minutes.
Are we going to do a pledge?
Oh, we need to pledge him. Pledge fast. There we go.
Trying to get out of here?
That was
Please
quick.
rise.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll go back. Okay, the agenda is still okay. Minutes from the study session of March 12th. Any changes?
Yes.
Jerry?
Okay, hang on. Okay, of our packet here, page 4. And before I make my additions, it's really an omission of stuff that's not in the minutes that I think would be helpful. Because as we all know, the minutes are important, and I think it should accurately reflect what was said and conducted during the course of the meeting. For those that aren't at the meeting or watching it on TV or the computer, in the minutes concerning the plastic bag discussion, in there, the minutes only reflect the stuff that was pro-argument, and there's nothing in there reflecting the opposition side of the argument. So I thought the minutes are inaccurate. And also on line 39, where it says staff recommends and City Council concurs, it was not unanimous. And I think it would be better to reflect that it was not unanimous. And also it continues on that same line 39, that the staff should begin a community outreach program. It should also reflect that it's a community outreach concerning plastic bags. And also, as I recall, though, the majority of the council that night was opposed to adding the tax or the fee. I know some up here in city staff likes to call it a fee. I call it a tax when you're going to add something. So I think that was not in the minutes, and because of that, it doesn't reflect accurately on what was actually discussed. So if you could add those comments in there and add some opposition, I think that would be helpful. More accurate as to what was discussed. And that's all I have for that particular minute.
Any other changes? Okay, seeing none, those are approved with those changes. The minutes from our regular meeting of March 19th.
I have a change.
Jerry?
Okay. Have I mentioned that the minutes are important? So, if you will, please, in our packet, page 13. Beginning on line 234, it says he, referring to me, stated that there are good reasons for executive sessions, and City Council has used the executive sessions appropriately. You left out the word usually appropriately, and I think that is what I had said, usually appropriately. So if you will, please add that in there. Also on beginning on line 237, he, that being me again, he was elected by citizens of District 2 to represent them. You left out the rest of what I said because you ended it at represent them in the best interest of the city. What I had said, to be more accurate, going back and reviewing it, it said represent them and to make decisions that are in their best interest and or the city's best interest. And I realize the minutes aren't intended to be the dialogue and stuff.
No, they're not. That's why we have the video.
The minutes are there for those that don't watch the video. Okay, so I think the minutes need to reflect, unless we're going to change the reasons for having minutes, the minutes need to be accurate. Also, on line 238, he, that being me again, he will continue to trust and listen to city staff. I also, part of that same sentence was, you ended my sentence, I said, he will continue to trust and listen to city staff, and equally, if not more, to the citizens of Littleton. And one last item. No, that was it. that was it. So if you could, please finish my sentences on there. It makes it more accurately than half of what I said. Thank you.
Bruce?
Wendy, I think on line 320, the sentence that starts the intent, I understand what you're trying to do or what you're trying to say there, but I don't think the sentence is reflecting that. It just doesn't, it's not written right. So you need to just reword it based on what you're trying to communicate based on what we said.
Okay.
And then on line 404, I think the rezone, I didn't go back and double check it, but I think the rezone, wasn't it 6775 instead of 3775 South Santa Fe? Just maybe double check the address, that's all.
Okay.
It's on line 404.
I think you're right.
That's all I've got.
Good catch.
Any others? Peggy?
On line 487, on page 13, I asked during that discussion, so this is what I think needs to be inserted. Shouldn't the limit on the investment be on the expected amount at the time of maturity? Otherwise, don't we risk losing all the interest? And Mr. Farman agreed to make the change. That was in the investment policy.
Okay.
Any other changes? I have one on line 332. Please add the word not. Mayor Brinkman stated that this is not a severance package.
Oh, we changed what you said.
332. Oh, sorry.
Okay, any other changes? Okay, those minutes are approved with those changes. Wendy, we may, do you want to just, we'll approve those tonight and then shoot a copy back to council in the next packet, just to, because there were quite a few.
Yes, I will.
So take a look at it. Okay, thank you. Okay, city manager?
Thank you, Mayor. Just real quickly, 3 quick items. I wanted to let you know the police chief interviews are scheduled for next week, and we have 44 people participating in that. Councilmember Cole is the representative from council, so I'm feeling really good about the makeup of the groups. But we hope within a couple weeks we'll have a new chief named for you. So keep you updated on that. You may be speaking to this, but the South Platte working group has chosen Stream Design LLC to do the visioning process for the South Platte River. The mayor and I sit on that South Platte working group, and we're in the process of reviewing their proposed scope of service, and don't have much more than that other than that process is moving forward, and I think that's both exciting and timely relevant to the council's discussion on economic development, and as we look at the Santa Fe corridor development along the South Platte. And then lastly, there's been a lot of discussion over probably the last, well, probably longer than I care to acknowledge, but for a while on the downtown parking waivers and reductions, and we're just about done with an analysis of that, and so I'll be getting that out to the council, and we'll get that information up on the website as well. And then once you guys have had a chance to review it, you can let us know any questions you may have, and if necessary, we can schedule it for a study session. But we've broken it out in terms of the waivers and the reductions, both inside those that have utilized the historic preservation piece versus just asking for through the PDO process or something like that. So pleased with the review that staff did, and we're just, like I said, we're just about done. We'll get that to you. That's all. Thank you.
Councilmember Cole.
Oh, first tonight, whoa. I have 2 things. Yay for 3 things. Hooray for the rain, which we need so bad, even if it requires umbrellas. So I have a request, Michael, on the either before or when we get the fall budget proposal, can you give us some sort of evaluation of the new approach we're using with health and wellness, in terms of cost and users and those kinds of things that we hoped were going to happen.
We're running about a 63%, I'm not going to remember the term he uses, but utilization.
Yeah, but maybe
But yes,
also
we will.
some numbers, right,
Yep.
to let us see on that. I know it wasn't supposed to be like a flip the switch and suddenly everybody was going to use it, but to get some insight.
Happy to.
And then probably everybody's going to push their chair and shove me off the dais here when I request this, but sometimes, such as tonight, we have very, very short agenda, but we have a really long list on our study session agenda. I mean, things that have been on there since probably before last year even, and we don't get to them. So I'm wondering, don't wring my neck, folks. I'm wondering if we might schedule a study session after our regular meeting when we have really short meetings for some things that don't necessarily require us to bring in people, late, for their schedule. Or if we could put some of that in general discussion in our regular meeting. I just hate seeing so many things stacked up.
Jerry?
I think we could cut our meetings down every meeting if we would stick to the topics instead of going into some dialogue that's unnecessary. I think, Peggy, there are a lot of issues we do need to discuss. We don't have to go excessively late to do so, but
Yeah.
I'd be willing to do that. And I'm someone who has to get up in the morning and go to work, but I'd be willing to do that. I do think we should show a little respect for each other up here as well as our citizens. And some of our discussion can go quite lengthy that doesn't need to be.
Thank you.
I would just comment that we're actually moving most of these things along, but I think to the extent that we can add things and be respectful of time, certainly be cognizant of that and whether we can add it to general business. We're constantly moving things around. But the things that haven't moved up from the pending study session are primarily things that we're not prepared as staff to have the conversation yet, not because of a scheduling thing.
Yeah.
The issues around scheduling
No,
have
and I
been more
appreciate that part
other
of
things
it.
popping
Yeah.
in.
You have
So
24 hours a day.
yeah. And sleep is well overrated, so I acknowledge
That's
that.
right.
Oh, and I have one more thing, too. I found a problem with, which I've shared with staff already. I've found a problem with display of certain attachments when we click on things in minutes, and staff is working on that. It's apparently, it affects mobile devices such cell phones and iPads and whatever, and things aren't displaying right. I don't know if you all have gone back and looked, but I went back to look for some reason at the February 19th meeting at an attachment, and all I got was gray space when I clicked. And so they've been working on that. So I'm making I'm calling attention to that so that if anybody in the audience, at home, whatever, encounters something a problem when they're using our new website, please remember to give feedback, because otherwise they don't necessarily realize it's a problem. So, thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
Yes. First of all, I want to offer congratulations to Mayor Brinkman for her performance at the Alamo Draft House. In case you've not been to the Alamo Draft House, I think the mayor will be on film prior to the beginning of each film showing, and you might look at her performance.
I hope she has a good agent that negotiated that on a per-viewing basis. Royalties.
Under general business tonight, I'd like to have a discussion about a motion to send a letter to the 10 legislators who are dealing with the rules of medical marijuana and urge them not to go to a general sales tax on marijuana statewide. It requires a statewide vote. I think that needs to come to the local entities, that if there's going to be a vote or a tax, special tax on that the local entities need to do that in order to help pay for the enforcement that we would have to have. And I don't want the state stepping in there and saying, we want a statewide sales tax on this. So I'd like a letter, to discuss a letter to go to them when we get to general business tonight. At the last meeting, I talked about the 125th anniversary of the city in 2015, as well as commemorating the 20th anniversary of the South Platte flood, the 40th anniversary, sorry, of the South Platte flood. I had in mind a citizens committee, as we did for the centennial celebration in 1990. But on some reflection, maybe it would be better if that task went to the museum board. In the interviews we had with candidates this year, they said they really would like to have more to do. And so maybe we look at sending that request to them and let them talk about whether they'd like to take on that task to create whatever kind of celebration we'd like to have for the 125th and for the 40th. They've got all the past history, and they can, I'm sure, come up with some brilliant things. I was, by the way, interviewed by a contract employee of Live Well, Colorado. It was discussing or asking me about opportunities for fitness and wellness within the city of Littleton and what we were doing to promote that. So it is a very worthwhile organization. We will be talking about that under our consent tonight. For all those folks out there who are runners, the 16th Annual Air Life Memorial Run Walk is Saturday, May the 11th. You can visit airlifedenver.com for information and registration information, but that will be occurring in Saturday, May the 11th. And the last thing, at the last executive board meeting for the Colorado Municipal League, I announced to the board that I was not going to be a candidate for re-election to the board in June, at the conference in June. And I think it's very important that we have somebody from Littleton to try to represent us. I can tell you from past experience that it's very difficult for people in our population category to get elected to the board without having to have some very heavy involvement with the Colorado Municipal League. This is the most popular, usually the most popular category, and have the most candidates of any of the other population categories. The lower population, they sometimes have to go out and recruit. Same with the upper category, although there are more cities moving into the above 80,000 population, so that's not the problem it used to be. But that having been said, if anyone on the council is interested, you need to probably make up your mind fairly soon. I would certainly urge, if no one on council wants to do that, that we get behind and support Mr. Penny. Mr. Penny's had a lot of involvement with the Municipal League, and I think would have the easiest chance than anybody to get elected from the city of Littleton to represent us on the executive board. That's it.
Bruce?
This is a non-fat latte, just, on behalf of Live Well. I wanted to point that out. Yeah,
Good.
yeah, just in case anyone's interested.
Well, this is black coffee. It's even better than that.
That's good. That's good.
I won't tell you what's in mine.
Pass it around and let's find out.
Water.
Okay. The only thing I've got is the announcement yet again of the 4th annual Epic spring cleaning event on April 27th, 8 to 2 p.m., 2 locations this year, new and improved, Home Depot at Federal and Bellevue, and also the Auto Lab site, which is an auto repair location at 4000 South Broadway. Now, here's a little tip. Both locations are going to be offering coupons for donations this year. So we've got the coupons for Auto Lab, and we've got the coupons for Home Depot. You come in, you drop a donation off, clothing, gently used clothing, household goods. You get a 5% off purchase at Home Depot, I think good through May 15th. And then Auto Lab's got some specials they're running in support of the program as well. My suggestion, and don't tell anyone I told you this, of course, but if you're maximizing your opportunity cost here, what you want to do is drop a bag of donations off at Home Depot and then go over to Auto Lab and drop another bag of donations off, and you get double coupon, which is the way to get it done. But, of course, as within past years, the event is for the benefit of interfaith community charities and ARC thrift stores. Again, for full disclosure, my day job is with ARC thrift stores, but I don't make any money off of this event. It's strictly for the benefit of the charities, and it's being supported and sponsored with basically just communication efforts from the cities of Littleton, Englewood, Sheridan, and South Suburban Parks and Rec. So come on out on the 27th and support a couple of worthy charities for people who can use the support in and around the community. Thank you.
You did say Home Depot, right?
I did say Home Depot, yes.
Jerry?
Oh. Just on the minutes, I had a lot of corrections on the minutes. I think what Wendy does is incredible. If you try to put the minutes, as she does every week, and try to put down what's important to the minutes, and what is important to me may not be important to anybody else. So I think she does do a fine job. So occasionally she will have to make corrections, but I do think she does as good a job as anyone I've ever been around. And this isn't the only thing she does is minutes, so she does do quite a few other things. I believe you have a couple other things to do, don't you, Wendy?
Yes, sir.
All right, so thank you very much for your accuracy also. Thank you. That's it.
Okay. Phil?
And after driving through and around Idaho Springs, power out to you on that, Wendy, in dealing with the twin tunnel blasting that's occurring. So. The Legislative Action Committee of the South Metro Denver Chamber of Commerce spent most of last week dealing with oil and gas issues. As folks may have been reading in the newspaper, a number of those issues are coming up. Some of them actually impact jobs. I know I have 3 neighbors that are involved in oil and gas, 3 near neighbors that are involved in oil and gas. Also, the Senate Bill 213, the one that's dealing with education funding revisions, was to be on the floor of the Senate yesterday and today. But I didn't see much in the paper this morning. Paul, I might have missed it, so you can probably tell me whether the Post had any coverage of that. The South Suburban Park and Rec District Board meeting last week, Lori Weigel, who is in front of us, is also has a proposal before the South Suburban Park and Rec District for a citizen survey. A couple other agenda items was a Happy Trails that the city's involved in update, as well as reminders for the Littleton Leadership Retreat Breakfast on April 30th and the Centennial State of the City address, which is going to occur on April 11th. The analysis of the Drought 2 announcement from Denver Water was postponed because Jim Priddy was pulled away from the meeting. Dr. Cog has its monthly MVIC meeting, which hasn't happened for the last few months, and that will be tomorrow. Jim will be at the big table, and then some of us may be sitting around along with the other little kids around the outside. And just want to mention the discussion with the Economic Development Think Tank, as well as the continuation of the visioning with the Civic Canopy folks, is looking to be scheduled on a Monday evening to accommodate some of the reports that are there. I've tried to elevate the consideration for that to be on in a venue where we might be able to broadcast and possibly have other folks available to view rather than possibly just having it in the community center here. And I know that it's on the city manager's agenda to see how does that mesh with the planning board's meeting that's scheduled for that same evening. So, and the Health South facility, the rehab facility that's there on Mineral, is behind the wall, and they're very close to being finished. So stay tuned.
Bruce?
On March 30th, on Saturday night, it was a snowy night, and not everybody got out because of the snow, but a large group came out to the Elks Club for the annual recognition that the Elks Club does. I've been to several of those over the years, and I'm always impressed with not only what the Elks do for the community, but the people that they find in the community who have done things that help not only the Elks programs, but just communities, the community as a whole. I sat with several of the police officers that were present. Interim Chief Gene Enley was chosen to give the talk to introduce the person that the Elks recognized as the Police Officer of the Year. And it was Detective Russ Hoffman, who has worked in the city for, I think it was about 25 years, 30 years perhaps, and had, in my experience, been one of those detectives who had handled many, many, many difficult cases and truly had served the community, and not only that, chooses to live in Littleton. Russ was recognized, and what stood out in my mind also was the number of people who, while talking about other community issues, talked favorably about the impact of law enforcement and emergency services on them and their families. So it was a very nice evening to recognize Detective Hoffman, and it was particularly significant to me since I had worked with him for so many years. The following week he retired. So Russ is now retired from Littleton as a retired detective, Russ Hoffman, and I wish him the best of luck in his new endeavor as a retired police officer. I want you to know that I've moved, just so that you're aware, I am elected at large, so I'm still living in the city, but I did move from District 3 to District 4 over the last week. Finally,
4 to 3. I'm
sorry, from 4 to 3, finally getting settled in the house that my wife and I have been purchasing for a couple of years. And I also want to mention the economic development presentation that the city manager did at the last formal meeting. It was just a snapshot of what we're trying to do as a city and a council right now to attract and encourage businesses to come to Littleton and be able to do the kinds of things that make Littleton the place of choice to live and work, retire, raise a family. And so if you haven't had a chance to see that, recognize that's a snapshot, and in a few weeks it'll probably be outdated by some other great event. But that is kind of representative of what we're trying to do so that we can find a way to, on the tax revenue side, keep our city services properly funded. That's what I have. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple of things. Michael and I met with the new executive director of Arapahoe Douglas Mental Health, Joan DeMaria, had a great conversation with her, and she's looking for a number of ways to engage with the community, and we talked about a number of opportunities there. So I think that we're going to be able to pursue some great joint ventures with that group. They do an incredible amount of outreach and amount of service for the community, and their budgets are just getting beat up all over the place by the state and by the federal government. So they are looking for creative ways to continue to serve a very high-need community. Also had the opportunity, I've had the last couple of weeks have been kind of speech weeks. But it's been kind of interesting. Had a great opportunity to go to the Littleton High School where the Japanese consulate put on quite a event, and it was called Kizuna. I don't know, I said that wrong, but it means friendship. And it was a thank you from the Japanese people to the students of Littleton High School for the work that they did in helping the Japanese recover from the tsunami and the earthquake. And Littleton High School has a program, a Japanese program at their school. One of the few, I think there's 8 that have that in the state. And they sent their students over there, and to hear the Littleton High School students and the Japanese students relate their stories and relate the new friendships they created and what they were able to do together and how they've created this ongoing friendship. And it's so important for the Japanese people to thank. And this was a huge thank festival type of thing. And it was a real pleasure to be there. We presented the consulate a gift on behalf of Littleton and enjoyed that. Also have had the grand opening of the Alamo, which was just phenomenal. And I have to say that they brought in the owner from the Alamo and a couple of other of their head folks that are actually stationed in Texas, and their praise and their excitement over being in Littleton and seeing the community embrace them and working with the city. And it was a challenge to put that theater in. It was a big challenge. I talked to Jim Thielen, and he said that they broke the record for the amount of inspections that they had to do over there, in excess of 300. But it was and is a fabulous amenity in the community, and watching people come and go and enjoying the movies and watching Alamo embrace this community and really create a Littleton vibe. It's been phenomenal, and hearing such high praise from those folks was fabulous. Also, just have had an incredible week of positive outreach from citizens and from businesses and from other electeds throughout the community, with phone calls and messages about all the great things that they're hearing, and the Breckenridge and the Alamo, and the things that we're doing on the trail, the improvements on the river. So the word is out there, and it's kind of caught fire, and it's great when you get these great messages of support and encouragement, and how excited people are for a lot of the things that are going on. So that's been fun. That's it for me. Okay. Guests or citizen appearances. We have no guest citizens. We do have a scheduled public presentation by Diane McClymans. Is she here for Meals on Wheels? No? Okay. Executive Director, Meals on Wheels? No. Okay, so that, we'll probably see that another night. Any unscheduled public appearances? If there's anyone in the audience who'd like to come down and address council, they're welcome to express opinions or ask questions regarding city services, council policies, or other matters of community concern that are not part of the scheduled agenda. Generally, an immediate response should not be expected. Typically, issues are referred to city staff for follow-up information or research and reported back to the council and the individual that initiate the comment or inquiry. We do not have any public hearings this evening, so if anybody wants to come down, please raise your hand. Norm? And please state your name and address, and you have 4 minutes.
Good evening, council, staff. You may not remember me. It's been maybe even a month. Norm Brown, 6081 South Spotswood Street in District 1. Agenda item 9A, your policy statement, there was something that caught my eye. In general, don't really have a lot of problem with it. On the second page, I'm using the revised draft, and I appreciate the changes you've made in it. Under land use and development, about a third down on the page, you state, we support policies that encourage infill and transit-oriented development and limit sprawl, and it goes on a bit further. It occurred to me that in the past few weeks, I'm probably the low person on the totem pole, but you've heard from a couple of engineers, a traffic engineer, a process engineer, a former attorney turned developer, asking you to look at the areas around the transit stations and develop a station area plan or something that indicates what the difficulties will be with traffic, what heights would be reasonable, what densities would be reasonable. As a general policy, sure, this is fine. I spent 3 years on the Planning Commission. I still hold that against some of you. When I interviewed for that position, the question arose, why do you want to be there? And I said, I think when you buy a house in Littleton or when you're living in Littleton, you should know what might happen across the street from you. And for the benefit of developers, they should have a reasonable idea of what would be accepted. Both those things factor in to getting a transit-oriented development plan in place so that citizens know what might happen and so that developers can have some idea of what's acceptable. You've heard from all these better educated and more erudite folks than I am about this. And so I urge you to proceed, direct the staff to proceed along those lines. I think it would be greatly appreciated by the citizens and the developers. Obviously, development is occurring and coming to Littleton. You've had a couple of hearings. The other related piece of that, not part of the policy statement, is about impact fees. And a couple weeks ago, Mr. Penny came down to the pub forum over at the Buck Center. It was pretty well attended. There were between 30 and 40 people there. And the impact fees came up. Specifically, there was a question about the development on County Line Road. And apparently, many of the properties, when they were subdivided, if I understood his answer, paid impact fees, yet there are development fees and impact fees that could be and probably should be assessed based on anticipated traffic, anticipated infrastructure, including sidewalks, sidewalk repairs. You folks spoke in a study session a few weeks ago about the effect of garbage trucks on the streets and so on. Well, all of this development is going to increase traffic, and there are going to be costs associated. So I think, if I remember correctly, Mr. Penny said that it had been, the impact fees were being examined, had been for 3 or 4 months, and he thought something would, revisions or recommendations would be in place before the end of this year. That's quite a ways out. And that's probably after some more considerable development projects come to you. So I would also ask that those fees be considered when you are looking at all the other revenue things in your last study session, taxes and fees, and you're also examining the shopping cart, the omnibus, and some of the other programs, the immigrant initiative. As you guys realize, I come down and listen to what is said about those programs. I think we've got some great programs, and we probably will have some difficulties funding them. So let's look at some of those impact fees. When you bring more people in, you will have more people using the shopping cart and the omnibus and all of the resources that you provide. I think those resources, those programs, help to make the city of Littleton a great place. Thank you.
Thank you, Norm. Bruce has a question.
Quick question. As you identified, the transit-oriented development area plan issues come up several times. But I wanted to ask you, we've last fall approved the downtown area neighborhood plan, which is certainly proximate to the downtown light rail station, and the Santa Fe corridor plan already pretty much exists vis-a-vis the mineral station. You were obviously instrumental vis-a-vis the downtown area plan. Help me understand how a specific transit-oriented development plan would differ from the existing downtown area plan.
Number one, the downtown area plan that we worked on and ultimately was approved was limited to the railroad depression for its east edge. So the station is at the very edge of what we considered. Now, we kind of looked over there and said, yeah, there's going to be some impacts, but we didn't talk about any of that. You have a Littleton Boulevard corridor plan that addresses that. It's maybe not archaic, but it goes back quite a ways. So you did away with the TIS, which I don't disagree with, on both station locations, but those are the kind of considerations that look at a radius, and of course you can't just draw a line, it's sort of more of a cloud, but our downtown area plan did not consider what went on in the neighborhoods east of here.
Okay.
That was not what we were tasked with. We, in general, dealt with the football, and for those that don't know, Santa Fe over to the railroad depression and, north and south, the limits of what we consider downtown Littleton, basically up to Electron Bellevue area and down past ACC.
Right.
So we looked at particularly the R5 neighborhood and considered what that meant. But the folks east where I live and up into the area where you've got a historic district, none of that factored into that station consideration. And you've had some development there, Littleton Station, not the light rail station, but the development. And nothing has been considered really in a radius like that around your mineral station.
Okay, okay. All right, I appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
Thanks, Norm. Anybody else? Pam? No, Paul?
Mayor, turn your time. Oh,
Can't remember what.
it's on the back.
Oh, you're going to get the timer. I don't know if that means anything. Or
Really?
There you go.
Now
Pam,
now
right?
we're in trouble.
I saw some electricians wiring the
Do what
floor
my
earlier
clerk tells
today.
me.
Oh, my gosh. Well, this is Paul Bingham, 236 West Delaware Circle. I mainly want to second what Norm Brown said. He did a good job of saying what needs to be said. I'd back up that a little bit with little additional words about the transit-oriented plan and your question, Councilman Stallman, about the light rail station needs to be the center of a plan, not on the over the boundary from a plan over here, over the boundary from a plan this other way. And the Littleton Boulevard study, which I think is a fine study, and there was a lot of work went into it, but it's remained just a study. I think it really ought to be incorporated in the COM plan so that it has some horsepower, for lack of a better word. Just being a study, somebody can say, well, that's just a study, forget about it. But it's a fine plan and really needs to be incorporated in something with some authority. The other comment I'd like to make, there's a sentence in this land use and development that bothers me. I may not be reading it right. It's a negative thing. The city shall oppose efforts that reduce or preempt municipal land use authority or impose further restriction on use and powers of urban renewal, et cetera, et cetera. Urban renewal scares me. Maybe that's misplaced on my part, but it says eminent domain and taking things and whatnot. I'm not real sure that ought to be in here. Like I said, it scared me. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Hi.
Leah?
I'm getting to be. I did a little PowerPoint this time because I got tongue-tied last time, so this will keep me focused. Let me just get it plugged in.
You're going to get some instructions.
Is it not plugging in?
It is in.
The man from behind the curtain.
Usually, they're different on every computer. It's going to probably function.
Try the F8 or the F4. Oh, the function.
There you go.
Yep.
That's it.
Wanted to talk a little bit tonight about the importance of reflecting and taking time to make important decisions, pausing to consider all possible outcomes. Littleton has undergone a lot of change in a relatively short time, particularly in the downtown area. We've transformed from a sleepy street.
Excuse me, could you give us your name and address, please?
Leah Burkett, 5730 South Bemis Street. We've had a lot of change, and downtown is now a vibrant and bustling center of commerce. While there may be pressure to keep the momentum going, there is a growing concern among residents about population density, infrastructure, and the ongoing sustainability of growth in our city, downtown, and beyond downtown. The number of proposals for high-density apartment buildings has many citizens on high alert, and if all of the current rezone requests that are on the table were approved, we'd have 1,900 additional apartment buildings in our city. Last week's high attendance at the pub session that Michael Penny attended shows how strongly many of us feel about this issue. Citizens ask, how will high-density development fit in with the City of Littleton's vision? And I just put the vision statement up there, which is to preserve a family-oriented and economically vibrant community that encourages citizen involvement, respects diversity, values community character, and enhances the quality of life of Littleton residents and visitors. Great vision that I think we can all agree with. But the approval of the Nevada Place rezone seemed to be based in large part on economic benefit to city and downtown merchants. There was this theory that the residents of this place would walk down to the businesses and contribute to the economic development of downtown. However, it's really unclear whether the retailers will actually benefit from this additional population, and further convoluted whether that would trickle down to the city. In fact, the outcome of high-density development could be a negative financial consequence. There's a large impact to the surrounding area, and the issue of impact fees has been raised. If it's 8% of assessed land value, which is what I think I understood, it may be inadequate, especially for some of these larger developments that are on the table. Beyond just economic goals, we have goals to preserve and cultivate a quality community. And there are many questions if high-density development would achieve that. So some of our questions collectively is it in the best interest of the city to yield to the pressure for high-density development? Will demand for these rental units continue, or is this merely a trend? What will become of the vacant apartments that already exist, and will increased density lead to increased citizen involvement? That's one of the goals of the city. A few more goals are to review all of the impacts and benefits of development and evaluate, sorry, I just get nervous up here, evaluate the diversity, density, and quality of the housing stock, continuing to update the comp plan, evaluate ways to maintain Littleton as a place where families wish to live, and review and update the city's development and zoning codes. These high-density developments all require zoning changes. I feel like the city is at a critical point with all of these apartments on the table. Our current comp plan is outdated, and that makes your job as decision makers really difficult, especially with regard to controversial high-density development. If our impact fees is inadequate, pausing to reevaluate that might be a good idea. So I think putting a temporary stop to the review of rezone applications would be a great opportunity to reflect on the direction we're heading as a city, the growth that we've already achieved, and gather our own independent information, such as the TOD areas. Just doing some home repairs last week over spring break, and was reminded of the adage to measure twice, cut once. And these developments would make a significant impact on the city. So I think we ought to get people super involved. What do they want to do? Reevaluate these impact fees and look at these applications at a later date. Can tell the developers to wait.
Okay, you're going to need to wrap it up.
Okay. This is the half-mile radius around the station. That waiting time would allow time for a TOD study to become part of the comp plan, which I requested last week. So please consider taking a pause.
Thank you.
Could you give a copy of your presentation to the city clerk? She could email us. Thank you.
Pam?
Still have it.
I was in a hurry.
Good evening, council and staff. I'm Pam Chadbourne. I live at Crestline in Nevada in downtown. I'm here for a follow-up, but let me first say I didn't coordinate with Norm or Paul at all. And Norm basically said what I'm going to say. Let me address, though, Mr. Stallman's question. The TOD is like college, and Littleton needs to go to elementary school and high school first. We need to walk before we run. The comp plan needs to document our studies of traffic impact, parking impact, and infrastructure and budget, which should already exist, Mr. City Manager. So a lot of this information is already at hand, and we need to put it together and document it in the comp plan. Then we can look at the TOD next. So let me just echo those comments. So a month ago at the March 5th council meeting, I requested that the city not approve any more high-density residential projects until a housing market study, including a risk assessment, is performed and shared with the city staff, the appropriate boards, the council, and we, the public. I said then that I don't believe there's a market in the medium and long term for the almost 2,000 units that have been approved or proposed in the 5 projects in Littleton early this year, and that doesn't include any more applicants who might be considering more residential development here later. Downtown Denver and surrounding communities are also adding thousands of high-density residential units, and it's hard for me to believe that there will be a longer-term demand for this type of housing. And I also wonder why we think Littleton's high density will be more appealing to the targeted luxury market than downtown Denver apartments or planned communities such as the 42-acre complex at Bellevue and I-25 Light Rail. And several people, everybody has already talked about John Wance's comments about impact fees. They're either missing or they're outdated, and they're far too low compared to surrounding communities. So tonight I'm here to ask 3 things. Has there been any follow-up on my request to study the metro residential market and Littleton's competitiveness in the metro market now and into the future? And has there been any follow-up on John's request to update our impact fees for residential development and other development? And what do you council members think of putting a hold on upcoming votes on rezoning for high-density housing until these studies are performed? And those are my questions.
Thank you.
And can I ask you, is there follow-up from a month ago?
The impact fee that process is in place to update it. I've contacted John Watson on that. I can't speak to the earlier questions. I haven't talked to Glenn about it. My expectation would be no, we haven't started analysis on competitive. We didn't get direction from council to do an analysis on the housing stock. He's been focused, as I said earlier, on the parking one thing at a time type of thing. The impact fee is in place in the sense that what it requires is a legal nexus review, and so we've contracted with Ford Frick from BBC, and so as soon as we can get that done, and I've notified John Watson, we're not in disagreement as staff. A, we don't have an impact fee for residential other than open space and a cash in lieu of, and B, the commercial impact fee is based on fair market value is the actual term that's in the ordinance, and which is certainly not a legal nexus. And so we're not collecting those fees at this point, and we're working as fast as we can, but you can't just arbitrarily pick a number. You've got to be able to show that there's an associated impact and what those costs are, and each community is obviously unique in that circumstance, and so we're moving as quickly as we can to get that, and the moment we get it done, we will have both a study session and a proposed ordinance for council, and I hope it comes sooner than later, but it's time-consuming analysis. They have to look at costs. They have to look at what our maintenance costs are. They've got to look at surrounding communities, make assumptions, et cetera. So we're working as quickly as we can on that one. And as council is aware, we are hopefully, we being the planning board at this moment, in fact, I think we're scheduling another joint study session with council and the planning board. You guys will shortly be wrapping up the comp plan, and to the extent that the next directive on that is sub-area plans, then you will have that opportunity to give us the next to-do list on it, or any additional follow-up you may want to see on the comp plan.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Pam.
Well, I need to ask you when I can get answers to these things, maybe kind of like Marty did about Manager Penny's contract. Is there a time at which we can hear a response?
I can't give you a time. I mean, some of the questions require more looking into and involving other people. So we will contact you within 2 weeks and let you know what you can expect.
Okay, great.
Okay,
Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Carol?
I'm Carol Breezak, and I live in the fourth quarter. I also wanted to express a concern about the policy statement that dealt with the land use issues.
Fourth quarter?
Fourth district. Did I say fourth quarter?
I'm listening.
The statement mentions the transit-oriented development, and I'd like to know what your understanding of a policy is that you can support that encourages a transit-oriented development, since we have not defined any transit-oriented development guidelines in Littleton. So we've got a policy statement that mentions it, but yet we have no guidelines in Littleton. So I'd like to hear that discussion before you approve it tonight, so that it's very clear to staff what it is that you mean. Same thing with the urban renewal. Next item is my favorite subject, the open meetings law. And although it's my favorite subject, I really don't take any pleasure being here to address you again. The best way to stop me is to conform to the open meetings law. On January 29th, the regularly scheduled study session was a special meeting, and a meeting that formal action could take place. The agenda showed a scheduled executive session, so it was clear that you knew that you were going to be meeting, even if we didn't know what you were meeting about, you knew. The city manager and the city attorney were both instructed by council to remain until the council reconvened. Once the council returned, the former city attorney was not present, but a motion was made to accept her request for paid leave of absence. What I've just stated is pretty much what is reflected in the minutes, but this is what I observed in part. What I'm about to say is what I observed in part by what actually happened and what didn't happen. You stated you were going in to discuss contract issues. There are a couple of violations in your motion. You met to discuss a personnel matter and did so without notifying the employee. By law, the employee has to be notified because the employee has the option to have the meeting held in public. There is no such choice for the employee involved. However, I'm assuming that your CIRSA lawyer did not believe it should be of concern, since he knew that there would be a settlement offered to the employee that would include a payoff in exchange for not suing the city for any violation of the open meetings law. The former city attorney did not ask for a paid leave of absence, in my opinion. That was made up by the council or the council's attorney. If consideration of such a request was made, then it would have been stated so in the motion to go into an exec session. That is because the law states that you are required to give, quote, as much detail as possible without compromising the purpose for which the executive session is authorized. Your motion omitted the requirement in the open meetings law to provide the public with as much detail as possible, in addition to citing the statute. If you were meeting to discuss a paid leave of absence, there would have been no reason not to say so in the motion. But that was not why you were meeting. The paid leave of absence became your cover story. If the employee had made such a request, why would you take action on the request without her being present? But since the paid leave of absence was just a ruse, there was no reason for the employee to be present. In fact, I would bet that while you were taking your vote, your attorney was meeting with the employee to inform her that she had requested a paid leave of absence and then presented her with a settlement agreement to be decided within a limited time period. A few days later, the public was told that the city attorney had resigned. It wasn't until, under Colorado Open Records request, did we learn that there was not only a resignation but a settlement agreement. In fact, the settlement agreement, or in the settlement agreement, it states that the agreement itself will be kept confidential unless there is a core request for it. I'm sure that the council was just following the advice of your attorney, but that is not always the best course of action. According to Steven Zandberg, who has litigated dozens of open records and open meeting cases, states when asked, whose responsibility is it to ensure that board members understand and comply with the open meeting and open records law? His response, it is the first and foremost each of their own responsibility. Second, the attorney representing the board. Third, the public and the press, to hold the board members accountable and to ensure that they comply with the law. Furthermore, Stanberg writes, when asked what is the most common violations of that local governments commit, he stated 3. Failure to announce the subject matter to be discussed in an executive session without the requisite specificity sufficient to inform the public what particular matters will be discussed. Merely citing the statutory basis for an executive session, such as personnel matters, is legally insufficient. Number 2, adopting positions, making decisions in the course of an executive session. This the open meeting law forbids. Third, coming out of an executive session and rubber stamping in public a decision that was discussed and made earlier behind closed doors. You are not alone. Yampa Valley Housing Authority made a similar mistake. It was reported, although the Housing Authority's board properly convened in an executive session to discuss as executive director, board members appeared to have erred in that they took action behind closed doors. In this case, that action apparently was the decision to seek this gentleman's resignation. The law specifically forbids public bodies from making any decisions in executive session. The Mesa County Commissioners made a similar mistake. Quote, if the county commissioners decided in a closed-door meeting to fire the county administrator, then rubber stamp that decision in a meeting open to the public, their actions are quite clearly in violation of the open meetings law, as Colorado courts have construed that law. It is your duty to know and understand the open meetings law. You should challenge your attorney if you were advised otherwise. Was the open meetings law violated, knowing that the settlement agreement would take care of that minor inconvenience of being totally honest with the employee and the citizens? Was violating the law with the hopes of not being found out worth the reputation of this council? I'm not taking issue with the action you took, but the process you used in getting the results you wanted. The end does not justify the means. You do not operate in a vacuum. Citizens do watch and do expect the council to be open and transparent according to the law, no matter how difficult the circumstances might be. Thank you.
Jack?
Good evening, and thank you for your patience. Jack Randall, Main Street in Littleton. I attended the meeting when the RTD salesman came to meet with us at Old Town City Hall, telling us about what was going to happen. The second, and I've got the document they handed it, and I wrote notes on the side. The second presenter specifically said, transit will mean an influx of new people who will commute to work. I think that's appropriate because he was answering the question that we asked about what does it do for the people that live here in town now. I think it's correct. A lot of people that live here are using it to commute. They're going downtown, they're going to games, and it's a good thing there. But there's two different types of transit zones we have. Mineral is far different, and the people that go down there, they commute into that from around the area. But this one down here is designed really electron-like, and the stuff that we've got down here, I think it is more transient-oriented development here than it is out in Mineral. And I would urge you to look very carefully when the time comes to inspect what comes up for a transit-oriented development plan, and keep in mind a transient-oriented development plan. They're very different because we haven't seen the business come to downtown Littleton. As Councilman Taylor said, that there's a lack of sales tax down here. If RTD was everything it would be, they should kick back in some of their taxes to us to make up for the parking we've lost. I also want to thank you for your politeness in listening to the people, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? I do want to make one brief comment regarding some of Mrs. Brezak's comments. The privilege of an exec session is something this council takes very seriously, and there are specific reasons that, or specific needs that allow us to go into an exec, and they are to protect the interests of the city. They're also to protect the interest of personnel and employees, and we do not enter into any exec lightly. We are very diligent about stating very clearly what we're going in for. We have actually improved our process very much over the last year and a half, and have consulted with a variety of attorneys on exactly what we should do and how we should do it. And I believe that we are going into an execs legally and appropriately. We are behaving appropriately in those exec sessions. We are doing what we need to do. Many of them are very tough and difficult decisions, but it is, I have to say, I'm very proud of this council for the way that they have been approaching these execs and the way that we have been handling them. I'm sorry there's disagreement with that. I also want to say that much of what Mrs. Brezak said regarding the personnel issue is not anything that we can address or that we can speak to, but I would offer that that is opinion stated by her, and that it is not factual information that can be endorsed by this council. So that being said, we'll continue with our agenda. Consent agenda is items can be adopted by a simple motion. All ordinances must be read by title prior to a vote on the motion, and any consent agenda item may be removed at the request of a council member. We have item 7A, which is a Live Well Colorado Healthy Eating and Active Living Cities and Town campaign, and this is consideration for a resolution for the City of Littleton to join the Live Well Colorado HEAL, H-E-A-L, Cities and Town campaign. Can I have a motion?
Madam Chairman, I move that...
I'd like to pull it.
Oh, Jerry would like to pull it. Jerry?
Yes, I need to know more about it, because as I read the information that was presented to us, it does talk some about the cost is unknown, is my
We'll
understanding.
have Deputy City Manager Mike Broughton come down and
Thank you, Mike Broughton, Deputy City Manager. The cost currently is unknown because we would likely move forward with projects that would involve the healthy eating, active living principles that are within the program, but we wouldn't necessarily move forward with those just because we're in this program, and so that's why I think the costs were unknown. There's no cost to join. If you'd like a little bit more background on it as well, we have Julie George, who's the director for this campaign from Live Well, Colorado, with us as well. So
I guess the unknowns for me is I understand what wellness programs are and all that kind of good stuff, and I'm one who exercises, so I understand those things. But I guess my concern is the cost. I mean, who's going to administer the program in the city? How much time are they going to spend on it? What are we going to have to do, we, the city? I know bikes, we talk about having bikes for folks. What kind of costs are we looking at?
we already do have a bicycle program just through those doors. There's bikes available for city employees. We already have the Littleton Employee Wellness Clinic, which is funded through the city for city insured. There are other various things that we do. We have things like a bicycle pedestrian plan in place, and those are items that are already in place. We're actually ahead of the curve for a lot of things compared to a lot of communities when it comes to these kind of issues. It's not so much administering a program, it's just keeping in mind principles designed around this campaign.
But it is going to cost something here. It's going to take staff time.
There are projects that we would move forward likely anyway. It's just the fact that we get recognition by joining this program. Additionally, one of the other additional benefits I think I mentioned in here as well is it gives us potential access to funders that fund both Live Well Colorado and items that are included in this kind of a campaign.
When you say that the city will incur costs to complete the projects, I mean, what are these costs?
It depends on what issues or what projects were to move forward. It looks a lot at the built environment.
I guess when I think cost, I'm thinking something with numbers and dollar signs on it, not just words. What kind of costs are we talking about here?
It depends on what projects move forward, what's funded. Arguably, if we repair a sidewalk or provide additional access to a sidewalk, that fits under this program, but we'd probably likely be doing that anyway. There are other things, additional access to trails, signage, designation of trails on streets, things like that, that we're doing anyway, regardless.
So the cost could be curb cuts or something along that line?
Yes, but they would likely be things that we'd be doing anyway. It's not that we would be incurring additional costs to comply with the program.
Okay. I guess I would still like to know more of a plan of what kind of things we would do. I know just last week we talked about asking citizens for a possible, discussing whether or not we would go to the citizens to ask for a tax increase to fix our roads and things like that because we don't have the money. So I guess with that in mind, I would like to know any additional things that we're possibly going to add to our expenditures. I'd like to have just a plan of some sort other than just, well, I'm not really sure.
And as we move forward with projects, we can happily include in there what it would take to, or what portions of those projects may be involved in this
Now, as a
campaign.
part of the revenue, I presume, Mr. City Manager, then are coming from the funds that have been allocated already for what?
Well, what I was going to add in here to Mike's comment is that these projects are really things that would come under the capital improvement projects that go through the budget process and are approved by council on an annual basis, and then we would assign credit to those projects for the Live Well. So as Mike mentioned, we're not talking about additional projects or new things. These are projects that we would bring forward as part of the annual budget process for capital improvements. You either would say yes or no as you do on other capital projects.
And then with that, you would get credit on certain things, but these are already.
Yes.
So we're really, the expenditures we're talking about then are capital stuff.
Correct. Yeah. The vast majority of them are, and they're things that they're not new expenditures in that sense. They're things that would come forward as requests, implementation of the bike ped plan as an example, things that you have the ability to say, yes, we want to do it, or no, we don't. And then to Mike's point, it does allow us to try to get some additional dollars to support those capital improvements.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Bruce and then Phil. Bruce, you had your hand up.
My question was, does the word concurrent maybe fit there, that these are costs that we're going to be there, and the concurrent purpose of a curb cut could now also be something that relates to an or a pedestrian bike plan or something like that? I'm trying to reflect Jerry's concern that we're not adding a new program, and we're not modifying existing programs with a cost. What we're doing is finding a way to concurrently label projects that would have occurred otherwise, and with maybe an infinitesimal change in the direction of them, but not a cost issue.
Correct, yeah. And that's kind of the goal of the program, is to ensure that in the back of our heads, we keep the idea of active living in place.
Thank you.
Phil.
And Mike, just to add to your comment on access to funding and that possibly additional resources can be brought to some things that parallel our policies already and our goals and objectives. My understanding was that actually the campaign will lend resources or apply resources to help us take policies to reality, i.e. their last statement here, upon adoption of your city-town council, they become a member of the campaign, and as part of your membership of the campaign is free. And as part of your membership, the cities and towns campaign staff will provide free support, meaning no additional cost, and resources to turn your policy goals into reality.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Peggy?
Yeah, so first, my usual question on things like this, do I have permission of council to give some corrections separately on grammar and mechanics?
Yes.
Thank you. Then, two questions otherwise. One relating to Jerry's issue. In part 2, the be it further resolved, the city of Littleton should make every effort to promote access to healthy foods by doing certain things. Can we not insert in there, make every effort as the budget allows, so we're not committing to something, just clarifying that we're respecting that we're not going to go beyond what we really reasonably can do? I don't know if that would take care of your issue or not, Jerry. It just puts a little guidance.
Well, I think the two Michaels answered my question. That's really revenues that are already there for that type of, whether, again, I use the correct.
Well, I don't know. I think to have a statement that says to make every effort possible goes beyond something else. I mean, so
Sure.
if it's a friendly kind of thing, if we could do that. But I do have another minor question. Part 4, be it further resolved that under implementation that city staff should report to council annually regarding steps taken. I'd like us to specify a month maybe, like July or August or something in there so that it triggers that. And it seems to me it would be good going into the following year's budget issue. Would that,
Yeah, that's fine.
is that comfortable
That's
with
fine.
people? Okay.
I would ask council if you just maybe to Councilman Cole's last comment, tie it to the budget process and not a month specific.
Okay,
because
no, that's okay.
That'd be easier than coming to you and saying, we don't have an update quite yet because we're X, Y, and Z, but
No, that's
absolutely.
okay. I just
No,
think it's nice to have a trigger of some
certainly.
sort.
No,
Yeah,
that's great.
thank you.
Okay.
And
Bill?
Mike, I can get with you on the tweaky things.
Okay. I move to approve the resolution for the City of Littleton to join the Live Well Colorado's Healthy Eating, Active Living Cities and Towns campaign, with one adjustment to the implementation, item 4 on page 3 of the resolution, to look for an annual report in conjunction with the city's budget process.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries.
Okay, item 9A. 9A is a legislative policy statement. The City of Littleton policy statement will provide legislators and city staff direction on policy issues at the regional, state, and federal levels that may affect the operations, authority, and finances of the city. This was brought to us in a study session, and Councilmember Cole had some concern or some edits that I think were probably more substantive than grammatical. So this has come back to us with some of your changes, Peggy, I'm seeing in the revised draft. Okay. Mike, do you want to give us a little brief update?
Pardon me. You have before you the original draft that you had at the study session and the revised draft, which includes requested edits from Councilmember Cernanek, one from Councilmember Cole, and another one, the addition of the water, wastewater, stormwater from Councilmember Stallman. And a quick.
Could you talk in your mic a little more?
Oh, pardon me. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
And a quick overview. Really, this is a policy statement comes before you as it's really a broad-based statement to ensure that legislators know where you're coming from and what your concerns are. It's not designed to encompass every issue or every specific facet of a topic that's mentioned in it. It really gives direction to both legislators and staff who are dealing with them on issues of concern to the city. This was compiled looking at other policy statements from other cities in the state, as well as the Colorado Municipal League, and as was mentioned, it was reviewed at a council study session. One area that Councilmember Cole, I know, had an issue on was the same area that was mentioned in public comment. She desired a qualifier on the support policies that encourage infill, transit-oriented development, et cetera. So that was the one comment that really wasn't included in there because I thought it'd be more of a substantive issue for you. So any questions or comments?
Questions? Peggy?
So questions, comments, maybe comments, and then you guys can react, or?
Well, questions, and then we'll get a motion, and then we'll have discussion.
Okay.
No questions? No? Anybody questions? Michael?
Mayor, I just want to emphasize what Mike said, that this is really, this is used when we or you are down at the State House dealing with the General Assembly and issues that the legislators are working on, which of course they have to demonstrate are of statewide concern. And as Mike mentioned, a lot of this was taken, A, from other communities, but B, the Colorado Municipal League's policy statement, which I know probably all of you are familiar with, but Councilmember Taylor in particular played a role in approving in here. So just in context, it's really a directive to us when issues come up and if we're contacted from the legislators. Kathleen Conti's got a bill right now dealing with sales tax issues, and are we in support of that, or are we not in support of that, that type of thing. So just want to put it in some level of context. This is not a local policy statement about what you want to occur in the local jurisdiction and ordinances that you may or may not consider, but it's an issue that we want to push either do we support or do we not support if the General Assembly on a statewide basis is moving something forward. And so that's really what it's, for what it's worth, just additional detail on that.
Mike?
If I may tack on to what Michael said, additionally, this is a great item to hand to legislators prior to the beginning of a legislative session so that they know and understand and have fresh in their heads issues that are of concern to the city. So that's another big reason why this is coming forward now. Granted, they're still in session and will be done here in about a month or so, but when we start meeting with them again, this would be a great item to use.
They work on
Bruce?
next session before the end of the year. Yeah.
Bruce?
Yeah, Mike, I think Paul and Norm mentioned it, mentioned this land use provision concerning urban renewal authority. And Marty, I think, had mentioned it a couple weeks ago as well in passing. I've had the interesting opportunity to sort of live some of this because at work we've got a situation up in Fort Collins where we've got a store that's actually in an urban renewal redevelopment area. The utilization, what this to me basically says is we don't want the state impinging our ability to do a wide range of things that are parenthetical to urban renewal. So, for example, if we want to do tax increment financing to improve infrastructure or to support businesses as part of an urban renewal area plan, that's way far away from anything involving eminent domain, which is one piece of it at the far end of a spectrum, but there's a whole bunch of things that could happen up to that point. Can you talk a little bit about that just to give people some sense that, you know, that really the concept of urban renewal is broad spectrum kind of stuff?
Sure. For instance, I'll provide a for instance that's occurring right now in the legislature, at least has been talked about. It hasn't been introduced yet, but there's an issue with the state backfill regarding schools and the tax increment piece. And so there's talk of removing the school portion of tax increment financing from what Urban Renewal Authority could use to benefit for development, and that's just one of those pieces. Like you say, it's a broad spectrum opportunity tool that can be used by cities and towns, and it has there are components of it that are somewhat controversial, but are rarely used. It is a tool, though.
Okay, and again, as City Manager Penny said, I mean, the issue here is we're just basically trying to communicate to the legislature that we want to make those decisions. We don't want them making those decisions for us.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, Peggy?
Yeah, so based on, Mike, what you said, what Bruce, you just said, I don't see any reason then for the second sentence in land use and development. You know, I don't see what that's communicating, but because it's in here, of course, I've never served in the state legislature, but if this came to me and I saw this and that second sentence is in there, I would think in the context of the first sentence in that paragraph that this would mean we're supporting that, we're supporting policies that encourage that in Littleton. So I don't see really what would be lost by omitting that or in substituting one or two sentences. For example, we support policies that improve walkability, bikeability, and accessibility, public transportation, and other alternatives to driving. That seems to me to say something that maybe indeed we would be supporting big time in Littleton, and we would support elsewhere too. And we support policies that limit sprawl in unincorporated areas. Those two things I think people would support easily, but I have difficulty with referring to infill and transit-oriented development because it sounds like we're saying, man, we want to go big time for that here.
I think in the statement itself, the concern is that they don't impinge on your local ability to decide whether or not you care to move forward with transit-oriented development or infill development or just development rights in general for the city.
Yeah, but I don't see the need to have that second sentence to make the points about we want to preserve our rights to do what we're authorized to do.
Peggy, do you want to make a motion once we get to that point to make some changes?
Which, if we're having discussion, could somebody suggest?
We're just asking questions right now when we go to discussion.
So, but I mean, if somebody would say if they like one thing or another, then I can make a motion that maybe others would like.
You could
so, you want
make
me
it a
to do
motion.
that?
We'll get you.
No?
No, we want to continue discussion. Does anybody have any questions? Does anybody have any more questions? Jim, did you have Jim? No?
I have discussion after the second.
Okay, no more questions? Okay, thank you. What?
I move to approve the revised draft policy statement as the City of Littleton's 2013-2014 policy statement.
Okay, we need a second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table.
Okay.
So
Councilmember Cole.
I'll try the easy one first. I would like to strike the second sentence in the section on land use and development.
Okay, we need a second.
I move to do that, sorry.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to strike the sentence, "We support policies that encourage infill and transit-oriented development and limit sprawl and further development in unincorporated areas." That's under the category of land use and development. Any discussion? Bruce and then Phil.
I think it's a broad statement that goes beyond what we want to do as a home rule city to get into what could occur or not occur in an unincorporated area. And with our inability to really define transit-oriented development, I'm not comfortable with that term being in there also. I understand it's a guideline and it's a general purpose, but words have meanings, and I'm not comfortable with that one being right there. So transit-oriented development and the reference to unincorporated area concern me.
Phil?
I understand the concern for unincorporated area. I do not have a problem with transit-oriented development in infill as well, in that this is a set of essentially a policy statement, and these are not, in many instances, specific to what we would like to have happen in Littleton or not. In fact, the policy statement itself tends to emphasize, as a home rule city, we want to be able to make our own rules in this. Also, to Paul's comment around urban renewal, man, I'm getting goosebumps just trying to say the word eminent domain. I grew up, my grandfather had eminent domain imposed upon about a third of his farm. Every time I was with him, he made comments about how it took some of his legacy away. Whether it may have been appropriate or not, I kind of have this family imprint around eminent domain. I've learned that urban renewal is a technique that can be used in very positive ways to allow for financing of projects. So I'm not opposed to the use of urban renewal, because it's not just eminent domain, although that sometimes may get placed underneath that umbrella, but it's not an equivalent statement. So I want to give you some confidence in that's definitely there. As far as transit-oriented development, it's kind of interesting as to some of the comments that come through saying that the city wants to kind of take that flag, because although in this policy statement it uses a small t, a small o, and a small d, because when you use the capital T, capital O, and capital D, the connotation for that is planning for higher density. It doesn't say preserve lower density. It says it's planning for higher density, and it also has an objective of increasing ridership, which has been a real struggle over that, because a lot of folks don't understand who actually rides it for commuting to work. So there's a lot of discussion and nuances that occur across the nation in that. But recognizing this policy statement, it says small t, small o, small d. And it doesn't say that that has to be in Littleton, but that the use of public transportation by more folks, whether they're in that half-mile radius that Leah talked about earlier or not, is something that we would be in favor of.
Thank you. Bruce?
Yeah, I concur on the, where'd it go? Oh, there it is. Further, the unincorporated areas I have no problem with getting rid of. I don't have a problem with limiting sprawl, although I'm not quite sure what your guys' thinking or what our thinking collectively was on sprawl within the city limits. And I guess I very much agree with what Phil just said on the lowercase transit-oriented development. My view of it is that it encompassed a wide range of opportunities. Could be bus, certainly could be share of the ride, could be light rail, so forth and so on. And again, I look at this thing as broad spectrum. I think the opportunity, infill, could theoretically be the housing item that was mentioned a couple weeks ago with what we're doing with Denver, the low interest, what was it?
Metro Mayors.
Metro Mayors is the words I was
Homeowner
looking for. Yeah,
assistance
so I mean,
program.
that could be a quote unquote encourage infill kind of thing. So I tend to think these are broad concept statements and that they're okay as generally identified because they encourage the legislature to respect home rule and what we would prefer to see when we're dealing with specific situations and not constrain us with something that's quote unquote an issue of statewide concern.
Jim?
I think this sentence needs to stay in here because it's a very broad, general category statement. One of the things that DRCOG has tried very, very hard to do is to keep the state legislature from stepping in and saying, you will have limits on your growth, whether it's infill or whether it is on unincorporated areas or on the fringes of a city that is already incorporated. If you go back and look and some of the reports from the National League of Cities where other cities are talking about how the state has imposed these types of limits upon them. We don't have that here. What we've got in the metro area is a voluntary system for limiting sprawl, and in order to not have the sprawl be created to farmland and ranch land and mountainsides, you're going to have an infill. And the infill is probably going to be more successful where there is bus lines or happens to be a train station. We're lucky that we have that here in Littleton, but a lot of areas had to depend upon bus lines to do that small t, small o, small d. So not trying to duplicate what anybody else has said, I do think that statement is important to keep in there.
Okay, Peggy?
Yeah, so I really do think it's unrealistic to think that there will be no further development in unincorporated areas. I mean, at some point, it's going to happen. How and how much is a different issue, but the sentence that I'm moving to strike has two halves. We support policies that do one thing and limit sprawl and further development in unincorporated areas. It's both of those. And if you're going to limit development in unincorporated areas, then it's, I think, as Councilman Taylor just said, it's going to increase density. It's going to put pressure to increase density in existing places. And we're one of those existing places. And I do not want to see a statement that essentially has a tail whip in our direction. We can decide if we want to do that in the future, but I don't want to see a statement that essentially says it's okay to densify us, put pressure on us. I don't support that.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, we have a motion to remove the second sentence, and it's an amendment to our original motion. Yes would remove the sentence.
The vote fails 3-4 with Councilmember Taylor, Councilmember Stallman, Councilmember Brinkman, and Councilmember Sinanek voting no.
Okay, we have our original motion on the table. Peggy, did you? Jim?
Well,
Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, I was hoping Peggy would make another motion about the other things that you said you liked as part of this statement having to do with bike paths and so on like that.
I don't know if I said that, but let me see if I can do that. So we support policy, I move that. We support policies that improve walkability, bikeability, and accessibility to public transportation and other alternatives to driving, and policies that encourage sustainability in developments in unincorporated areas.
Not for sure you need that last part on there if we got the second sentence approved.
So you want the,
Let's read your first one
just the
again.
first part? Okay.
Read that
Okay,
again,
so
please.
I move that. We support policies that improve walkability, bikeability, and accessibility to public transportation and other alternatives to driving. And
Period.
question is where that would go. I mean,
Mike?
that piece, so.
If I might suggest, under the transportation item would be probably the most appropriate.
Okay, I
I'm
need
gonna
a
second
second.
our motion, by the way.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, amendment and a second. Any discussion? Okay. Does anybody want that to be reread? Are you ready to vote on that? Okay. A yes puts it in.
The vote is unanimous. The motion carries.
Okay. Bruce?
I just want to express a general concern. And I appreciate about two-thirds of what we're trying to say here, because it's very important that as a home rule city, it's understood from the get-go that that's part of what makes Littleton and other home rule cities special. And every time the state legislature chooses to incorporate the words of statewide interest into some of their legislation, they have taken home rule right out at the knees and will not allow local control. And to me, local control, local issues, and being Littleton focused right here in this room is vastly superior to any decision that's going to come out of the state assembly. And I think there's a very great tendency of them to forget that. So on the whole, I really support this. But there are some creeping issues that I'm concerned about, and that is sometimes we get wrapped around special districts and regional issues and RTD, and we begin to dilute, I think, those recognized levels of control in the state, because we've created intermediary levels. And in a couple places we kind of refer to supporting some of those. And if I had my druthers and I could edit it, as tightly as possible, I'd say every time it in any way reflects that Littleton in our guideline is going to be compromised, not the inability to compromise itself, but to be compromised by its involvement in something that is regional or not one of those state, county, municipal entities that are the formation of Colorado, I'm really concerned. So I'm saying a lot of words there, but I would like to see a stronger statement about the importance of home rule and pull out some of the things, not that we're not willing to work as a partner, but sometimes I think we compromise in the bad way our own efforts here. It's a comment, and I'm not sure that it kills the issue, but it makes me concerned that we maybe missed the boat to have a stronger sense of guidelines about who we are and what we feel.
Phil?
Yeah, I don't know if I agree that it's not stated strongly in here, because it's actually our first statement is about home rule.
I understand that.
And I would say any legislature that doesn't read that and recognize that's number one on our list would do so at their peril, to maybe use some strong language on that. And so I guess I don't see it as missing. And we always have the opportunity when we hand it to a legislature or communicate it to the legislative member, our opportunity to emphasize that's number one for a reason. We're special, and there are other people that are special. Don't tread on us.
Okay. Bruce?
Does anybody else want to dive in on this one, or?
No.
If it's new, yeah.
Yeah, I've got a different question to ask.
Because if Council Member Beckman, if you want to make an amendment to any of this, go ahead and think about that.
I don't know that I could come up with a succinct amendment. It's just more of a general tone that I would have preferred that it reflected.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Bruce?
Mike, I like the paragraph you guys inserted about water, wastewater, and stormwater, I think is actually quite good. I very much like what you said here, and I guess I'm going to ask the question, and I'm not going to make it as a motion unless there's nodding of assent that it's appropriate to do so. I'm guessing you guys went broad on this to incorporate the nutrient issue, which is obviously the main bugaboo with this whole topic to begin with, whether it be wastewater or stormwater. I guess my ultimate question is, can you share your thoughts as to why it was better to do it this way as opposed to actually use the word nutrients only by virtue of the fact that if we're giving it to a legislator, they may or may not connect with it, but that's sort of a hot button, word.
Sure. And my thoughts were just what you had articulated.
That it was already in there.
It was broad-based.
Yeah.
There's already regulation in place for nutrients. The rules and regs are moving forward, or have already been adopted and are moving forward. And then there's also stormwater issues that we've heard coming forward as well. So it was more of a broad-based statement.
All right. I mean, I don't.
If there's a desire to add nutrients.
Well, that's where I was just sitting here noodling on it, and I don't know if we think collectively it's worth. I'm seeing heads shaking no, so I'm going to assume the answer is it's not.
Good assumption. Okay.
Yeah. Or I can do a 1 versus 6 again. That's always good.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, so I do have one question for Wendy. On the original motion, was it to approve the revised draft or the original draft?
The revised.
The revised draft, okay. So we have a motion with approved amendment on it to approve the revised draft with the amendment that was added to support the walkability, et cetera. Are we ready to vote? Yes. Okay. A yes means approval. Peggy?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries.
Great. Okay, 9B, a discussion regarding expenditure budget. And I put this on the agenda based on some communique with Councilmember Cole. She was inquiring into the expenses of the retirement party for the chief of police and the 2 commanders. And based on her communique, she felt as though there may be too much latitude in the budget since it allowed for the expenditure of in the neighborhood of $3,500 for the event. She also stated that she felt that the line item budget provided more specific information than the budget we used for the 2013 that tied budget requests to council goals and objectives. I place this on the agenda because I want this council to give clear direction and final direction to staff on our expectations regarding discretionary spending from the budget. There has been an ongoing issue with food at council events, including outreach meetings, council breakfast, council dinners, study sessions, T-shirts, et cetera. And I know Councilmember Cole has voiced her concern a number of times and has been consistent in her request to trace these expenses back to the budget. So I want to have a discussion so that staff gets clear direction from council as to what our expectations are, and we need to clearly define for staff what they are in terms of our expectations of the level of detail that we want from the budget and the amount, I believe, the amount of discretionary budget latitude that we're comfortable with. We are a representative body, and as such, we all may have slightly different approaches but we need to find the place where the majority of us are comfortable. And since we always support the body's decision, we will either need to modify our current process or keep our current process. So I invite any discussion on this. Any input from council? Bruce.
I think it's important that council not get down in the weeds, but stay at the policy level. But when we get ourselves into community meetings and we find ourselves discussing community issues, and they tend to be down in the weeds, then they become political. I mean, that they demand us to be able to respond. And so it's very difficult when we're placed in that position. So, first of all, I think it's very important that there be standards and policies in place. If there's a standard or a policy in place that explains how expenditures are done in the least micromanagement level, then I'm comfortable being able to explain that more on a policy level. But in the case of that's being brought up, you know, in my years, we had pretty much a standard in the department that I was in, and somewhere that went awry in this event. So there wasn't a standard or a policy in place, or if there was a tradition, it was no longer being followed. It's very important that council not get involved in hundreds of dollars and thousands of dollar issues when really it's hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions of dollars of issues that demand our time times 7. But we have to have department heads who respect that. We have to have an awareness of that issue and an understanding that if they don't keep on top of those issues, they're going to end up being discussed here at the dais, and they don't really want that. So it's a self-policing issue. I would hope that the departments and the city manager can manage it, and I would prefer that allow us to talk about the really significant issues facing the city.
Thank you. Bruce?
Yeah, I would agree with that. My experience with boards of directors, which is essentially what we are in a corporate parallel, is that our orientation is very much to set policy direction. And I think when we get into stuff like this, it tends to be all-consuming and distracting from really our job. I mean, we were elected to represent the citizens in terms of the broad policy goals and objectives of the city, to basically hire the senior leadership of the city and hold them accountable. Certainly if we have issues at the budget level where there's budgets that are being missed or expectations not being fulfilled at a broad level, there's definitely accountability. But I mean, my understanding of this particular event, and I was out of town, I wasn't there, but I had understood there were 200 people ballpark in attendance, which works out to be about $1,750 a person. And just for giggles, if you divide 3,500 by our expense budget, it's 0.007% of the total. It's just not something where we can add any value. I just think that it's completely within the discretion of staff, senior leadership to make a call. And, you know, I think we trust their judgment until such point in time as their judgment is proven to be not reliable. But I think this is really not moving that needle. So I'm very comfortable with what we did in the budget process in terms of the policy orientation as far as directing staff broadly.
Okay. Jim?
Well, I have sat and continue to sit on a number of boards of directors around the region, and we all deal with budgets. We all adopt budgets. And once you grant a department the money to operate with, they've got some flexibility within that ability to operate. I don't need to know every little detail of how they're spending the money. I like the budget process we went through last year. I think it gave me enough information to say, yes, this is a good budget and it's one we should move forward with and would support. You get unanticipated expenditures that come up, and every year it doesn't make a difference what department it is in, and you're going to spend money to solve that problem or to solve that issue or to honor somebody, as we did with the police command. And we approved a police department budget. I'm sure they could find that small amount of money that was spent out of their larger budget that was approved for them, and I don't have a problem with them doing that. It was unanticipated when we adopted the budget last November, and you could not plan for all of these expenses to come about. So they've got to have some leeway in order to expend funds that we have already said it's okay to spend.
Peggy?
I think Councilman Beckman said this best. Thank you. And we did not discuss this, but I thought he expressed this well. When we approve the budget, we get a huge budget book that citizens also can see. They can come and speak before we formally adopt the budget. So they see that. So that budget has goals and it has major statements of costs and then sheets attached that are explaining different line items. So I wasn't expecting, this is nothing about the people that were honored, but I was not expecting so much money, even though it's a small little bit of the whole big budget. I wasn't expecting so much money to be spent on that event. I've attended, I don't know, innumerable retirement ceremonies with police and other people here in the past 4 years. I attended Mr. Beckman's retirement, which was I believe the traditional punch and cake and mints and nuts and maybe something else. And it was a wonderful tribute, not because of the food, but because of the things that were said. I attended Detective Hoffman's retirement last week, and it also was very nice with the same kind of things. So, and we are drawing down our reserve, not huge with this kind of event, but we're drawing it down. So it did surprise me to have such an event when I think an equally glorious event could have been held here. That's where I'm coming from. But it's also, if we get this budget book that lays out all this stuff, it would be nice to have it giving us a little better expectation of what's coming forward. Otherwise, as I teased the city manager already, why not just give us a $47 million or whatever it is general fund budget and just let him turn it over to whoever he wants, however he wants. I don't think that's what we did last fall. And there is discretion, but it would still be nice also if somebody didn't use all their money during the year, that we'd get it back, so to speak. Anyway, so I'm not trying to make a big issue. It's just trying to know what it is really we're doing when we approve the budget.
Jerry?
Thank you. I'm coming from the private sector, and if we were to spend $35,000, $4,000, whatever it was that was spent on someone who had been with us for 5 years, probably somebody would be chastised or fired. If it was for someone in 25 years, that would have a different story to it. But for someone, even at that level, who's only here for the number of years they were here, I did have a problem when I found out what it costs. Again, I'm from a private sector, so I cherish every dollar that we have. And I was like, a few weeks ago, and we just gave $25,000 away to an organization that was already willing to pay their own $25,000. We said, well, why don't we go ahead and pay it for them? That just blows me away that we're spending people's money like that. So it isn't just the city staff that I think needs to be aware, and I think the smaller celebrations are great. But I think we, too, we're up here, if we're going to spend $25,000 and we gave it maybe 5 minutes of discussion, I think we need to look in the mirror on this, too, folks. This isn't our money. That's it.
Just a point of clarification that there were also the two commanders who were at that. It was their retirement, too, and I think they had each in excess of 30 years. And the $25,000 was from the Conservation Trust Fund, not the general fund.
I'm from the private sector. We would not spend that kind of money for someone who is even with us for 25 years.
Okay.
Because we have to earn our money. The city has the money given to them.
Bruce?
Well, just to add maybe some depth to it, personalize it a little bit. You know, I really did have a very nice retirement ceremony here in the city, but I also made a decision to recognize the members of the community and folks who'd helped me along the way and to honor the citizens. And I did my own private one. And it was down at Champs, and I know a number of people were there in the audience. And, you know, my wife and I chose to do that just to celebrate Littleton and that kind of thing. And it came out of our own pocket. And I felt really good doing that. And I received wonderful comments from the community and people that were there. It gave me a great opportunity. Maybe part of the opportunity was because I had the investment in it.
Any other, Phil?
Just a comment that I wanted to make. I think all of us, at least on the dais, recognize that celebrations are important. As an employer, we want to be a good employer, and I know that celebrations help to set some level of fabric. I think Councilmember Beckman's comments around following some levels of guidance and policy and maybe understanding where that is inside the realm for folks with combined 100 years of service. I wasn't as taken aback as maybe some others were in the amount. I would have loved to have had it in Littleton, just would have been my comment. But I think you know, when we start talking about you know, the power to convene and where government is on that, sometimes you know, reaching out to folks. And I know I definitely appreciated Bruce and Susan putting together their celebration and enjoyed having a chance to celebrate with them as well. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I would just add that I think that the way that the budget was presented to us was good. We've said it over and over and over again that we liked the way that was presented. Quite honestly, I do not want to get into that deep of a minutia on this budget. It is in excess of $70 million. We are dealing with $1 million problems, $1 million issues, $100,000. We have 430, I think now, employees, 415 employees. We have 10 department heads, and we have, I think we have to have a level of trust that when we approve the budget, that those who have been given the authorization to spend that money also recognize that that money comes from the hardworking citizens of this community, and they expect it to be used with all the appropriateness that is necessary. I really have a hard time believing that as popular as Chief Coogan and those commanders were in this community and as well loved as they were, that there would be a lot of citizens that would begrudge them a nice farewell. Whether 35 was too much or could have done the same thing for half the price, I don't know. But honestly, I think it's more important for me that we send off that level of service, that level of commitment to the community, that we send them off in a positive fashion. We have people from all over the region that were there, other electeds, other officers, and I think that it showed well for Littleton to show that level of appreciation. It also speaks well to the other employees within the city, and that's one of the things we talk about consistently is appreciation of the hard work that these guys do, and you know, it's all part of that circle. So we have got a lot on our plates. As Peggy said earlier, we've got study session backlog. We've got meetings that are, this meeting should have probably been about an hour and a half. We're into 2 hours with another issue on the table. We have got full plates. And quite honestly, this stuff flying across our conversations and our decision-making is an absolute waste of our time and waste of our energy. The staff is in charge of making sure that this stuff is done right. They blow it, that's when we step in. I'm not seeing a big blow on this one. So as far as I'm concerned, we keep this process the way it is, and I'd like to see if there's an issue with an expenditure, that it comes to the dais and that it will be a majority vote or a majority of agreement amongst the council members that we direct staff a different direction on that, and that we do not take this stuff offline. I think this stuff needs to come in front of council in a public way. Since we've all agreed, as I said, we are a body, we've all agreed that this is the budget and this is the line items, this is what we've given the city manager and the department heads, and then it gets dispersed down. So unless there's any contrary or contradiction to that, I don't know if it's necessary to do a vote. Is everybody okay with this, with moving forward? Okay, thank you.
Mayor, I would...
Just the comment that seemed to be most common was, if we can refer to a standard or a policy, when those issues come up, then we can deal with it immediately.
Do you want to put a written...
I was just going to say
Okay.
that. So.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. You can bring it back at the next regular meeting.
Be an administrative policy.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, item number 9C, letter to legislature regarding sales tax for the state issued sales tax for recreational marijuana, right? Jim?
Yes, how about if I just start with a motion and then we'll discuss it?
Okay.
I want to move that we send a letter to the 10 legislators who are on the special recreational marijuana legislation, to the leadership in both the House and Senate, and to our elected representatives, that expresses our opposition toward the state moving to a vote for a statewide sales tax on recreational marijuana.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion. Jim?
Well, the Constitution gave cities like Littleton the right for self-government. And part of the thing that we need to do as part of our self-governing is trying to keep the state from interfering with our ability to operate in an efficient manner. And we are the ones who provide the services like police protection and fire protection and take care of the streets and do inspections and lots of other services that the city provides. And we have to do that through our ability to have an income stream that allows us to do that. If the state steps in and starts increasing their state sales tax, I think it takes away the city's ability, if we wanted to do that, because I don't see that we could do that as well as the state and have both of them to pass. We need to be able to fund our own needs, our own safety problems, without having the legislature preempt us from doing that by their passage of a statewide sales tax on recreational marijuana.
Comments and questions? Bruce?
Just in Colorado, the way this Amendment 64 was written, it shall be regulated as similar to as alcohol. It's a two-tier system. Then by regulation in Colorado, that's how alcohol is regulated. And the tier here on the Littleton side for alcohol enforcement is expensive. It is an expensive part of police work. We have a special border commission that deals with it. We have any number of zoning issues that deal with it. It's the same as alcohol. It's expensive. I express a similar concern to Jim's, that without the ability to, pay as you go, this thing is otherwise an unfunded mandate. We need to be able to have some ability, some reasonable ability to cover our costs. And if the state puts that incredible tax that they've been talking about on it, not only do they create an issue that we could not then win a similar ballot for a tax on the ballot side, it also, if the intent of this thing was to regulate marijuana, well, we can put a price on it high enough that it'll go to the streets and go underground again, and we haven't accomplished a darn thing. So there's some reality there to the point that Jim's presenting in terms of what the intent was.
And I think that Kristen probably could tell us, but I believe that the state has prohibited us from having a special tax, local tax on liquor. So we can't recover our costs for liquor enforcement. I want to be able to recover our cost if we need to for recreational marijuana.
Bill.
And Jen, very much appreciate your motion on this. I just wanted to state my hope is that our discussion with the state legislatures isn't limited to a letter. Letter can be helpful, but also looking at our policy committee members at CML and CML board member to take it and that discussion through CML and the lobbyists that are there to re-emphasize that to those legislators. So support of the letter, but I wouldn't want our efforts to stop there.
Stop there. Agree.
Bruce.
So maybe just a clarification question. Well, two questions. Are there other communities? Is this a concerted effort, sort of similar to the CML issue? Are other? You're not aware of other communities doing the same thing? Okay.
Not at all.
Go ahead, because do you?
Yeah. Well, the other question I was going to ask was, the state has got some level of oversight that was part of Amendment 64. My understanding was they were going to hire people to do some level of administrative oversight of the licensing, and I forget exactly what the details were.
The same as with the medical marijuana.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess, is it a situation where then, I guess, how are they going to fund that? And I'm asking because I really don't know. Are they going to fund that out of the general fund, or is there ability to put the state sales tax on that?
But they can have a licensing fee.
Licensing fee like it is miracle.
Is that the intent? Okay, so then.
And excise tax.
But that's designated for something else.
Right.
Okay, but then, so.
Yep. Go ahead, Bruce.
But the sales tax component, then, you're saying that would stay with us because they've got some sort of a fee structure that would cover their costs more or less.
Yes, and they also are allowed to do the sales tax at their state level. What they're talking about is increasing the state sales tax on this specific product.
Okay.
And they already have the ability to.
The regular
tax on there.
Okay, thank you.
As well as licensing fees.
Okay, gotcha.
A couple comments. One is that I have somewhat of a similar concern as Councilmember Stallman in that in talking to some of the regulators on this, the state is already looking at somewhat of a formula that would be an unfunded mandate to us on some of the regulations, some of the packaging and different things that they're coming down with. They can't afford to do it all, so they're passing that expense down. I think having more information on if they don't, that income that they're looking from that, how much of that would then become expense for us, additional expense for us. So while I don't disagree what you're asking for, Jim, I think I would like to see a little bit more information on it. And may I offer this? Tomorrow at Metro Mayor's, it is on the agenda to discuss what the municipalities are doing regarding 64, and I will bring this up and get some feedback from what's happening, because I think that it would be it's always interesting to hear what the other folks are doing, and while we will also have lobbyist representatives there too regarding the bill. Get more information on that, bring that back to council.
I think it's very timely that we do it now, simply because there's slightly over 3 weeks left in the legislative session. That means this 10-member task force that was authorized to come forth with the suggested legislation has got to work fairly quickly. I think we need to get our letter to them very soon, and then we may have to follow it up later on with a different letter to other people. I don't know, but there's such little time left in the legislative session. I think we got to operate now.
Okay, so let's go ahead. Michael, sorry.
One comment and then follow up on Councilman Beckman's. I think this would be a specific tax, obviously, for marijuana, which may or may not have a global impact on the city's ability to go to the voters and ask for fee increases for other things. So that's the comment. And then the question, and this is Councilman Taylor to your motion, based on Councilman Beckman's comment as well, is do you want to include the excise tax in there as well? Because if the premise is that going to the voters is going to basically say we've reached a threshold that we're not going to support local funding requests, and if the excise tax is associated with school capital construction, which may or may not have a nexus depending upon your view of this, but if the general premise of the motion is to go back to the original, the last discussion, maintain local control and your ability to go to the voters for it, it would seem like that same issue would be there around an excise tax in terms of the general voters' appetite for additional revenue. So the question is, do you want to include excise in that?
The city does not have the ability to have an excise tax. The state does. And under 64, they were specifically authorized to have an excise tax. So I didn't address excise because I think it's in 64 that they've got that ability to do it anyway. And I think all it's going to do is just upset some people saying we're trying to take our cake and eat it too. And I guess I would prefer not to have excise tax in there.
Right. Again, coming at it from a local voter threshold was why I was asking. So great, thanks.
I understand.
Okay, do you want to read your motion, please?
That we send a letter to the 10 legislators that's working on the special marijuana legislation, as well as the leadership of the House and Senate, as well as our elected representatives that represent Littleton, a letter opposing a statewide sales tax on recreational marijuana. Was that pretty close, Wendy?
I'll second that.
We already have a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted him to repeat it. So a yes would get the letter started, sent.
The vote is 6 in favor with Councilmember Brinkman voting no. The motion carries.
Okay, there is no other business. Then we're adjourned. Thank you.